Okay, everybody, welcome to week number 3 in our Education for Better Work Self-Reliance class for students and professionals here on LinkedIn. This week is actually one of my favorite weeks in the course content, and it's something that has it's never been the same with every single class that I've run since I started in March. This presentation has just gotten better and better. With that being said, there's a lot of information to impart. And so it may take the entire 30-minute time block that we have today. And then furthermore, we have, of course, the weekly assignment and video that go along with it. So this week is quite the whammy, if you will. I also mentioned last week that this week is the week in the program that a lot of people start to drop off. Because they knew that they committed to a 6-week class, and week 1 they're excited, week 2 they're hanging in there, and then throughout that second week something happens. Something in the family happens, something at school or at work, and things change, and that reminds us that we are in a constant state of change. We are under constantly changing circumstances all our lives, and you really can't even go 2 weeks without something coming up. For me personally, I set this time aside on a Tuesday afternoon, my time, and the first week, no hiccups. The second week, no problem. Today, I made it just in time, right? And so the reason that I bring that up is that if you don't put some intention behind your education and career goals, they will be lost. You will go strong for a couple of weeks, maybe a few months. And then if you're not able to adapt to those changes, then you'll absolutely, lose that as a priority. You have to first know that your education and your professional pursuits, your career is a priority for you. If that is true. If not, then it's important not to kid yourself or not waste effort on something that you'd be happy putting that time and effort into something else. And so also knowing yourself, so important as we get into this third week. But without further ado, we will go ahead and get started. Up to this point in the course, we've talked a lot about the options which we have because of a greater education. But this week, we are going to be expounding upon that and addressing some specific paths to gain an education and learn the in-demand skills that employers are hiring for. Now, in the first week, I actually alluded, or maybe even straight out said, that formal education only constitutes 1/3 of the qualifications on job postings. Therefore, you're only partially qualified no matter what level of education you've obtained. You still have to qualify by demonstrating skills and abilities that are required to do the job and produce results. Knowing this, it becomes really important for the job seeker to be able to match their skills with the needs of the employer. This will really make or break your resume writing and your first round interviews. It also is very important when choosing the job that you want to go for, right? Understanding that, okay, I have this education, right? Maybe a degree or certification. Well, what else is needed? You see in my graphic here on the screen, this is a standard job posting that you can find on LinkedIn. You can find hundreds of thousands of them, and they're broken down into the minimum qualifications, right? And in some of those, you see experience, but also you see education. You see preferred qualifications, which includes some of those educational requirements. But also what I talked about in week 1 is that you'll often see, which you see in the very first bullet point under minimum qualifications, it's a bachelor's degree or equivalent practical experience. So having both of those, not only the bachelor's degree, but also having some practical experience in this field, means that you are doubly qualified. And then the responsibilities, you just have to convince a hiring manager, a recruiter, that you have the ability to perform and meet those responsibilities. And now you're set, right? And And of course, I make it sound so simple, but when you break a job description or a job posting down like this, and you start trying to figure out, okay, how much do I qualify? And then what more do I need to do to qualify? Or am I chasing one of the qualifications that's going to take, 4 years to get a 4-year degree and spend no time focusing on the preferred qualifications that are the other 2/3 of what you really need to qualify for. So, furthermore, if you don't possess certain skills, you need to make an education plan to acquire them. And that doesn't always mean going to school. Okay. We did basically that in week one. We narrowed down our education plan to encompass 2 week, or excuse me, 2 in-demand skills in week two. And so if you haven't gotten the chance to do week one and week two assignments, please make the time to do that this week. And that way you can get started on the week 3 assignment, which will carry us throughout the end of the class. I always mention, if you don't have access to the Google Drive in which you have the class recordings and the assignments, then please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And that way I can provide those for you. In week 2, we also addressed that people get hired for a reason. And one of those reasons is that candidates who are hired have the training or they have done the job before. And if you don't know someone who can get you past initial screening, you're going to have to qualify for the educational requirements as well as the skill-based qualifications. Okay, basically what I said in the previous slide. Now, yes, you can get jobs with paid training programs, right? An entry-level position, maybe that they say, hey, we'll be teaching you to learn on the job, or we'll be teaching you what you need to know so you can learn on the job. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. Okay, that path of education being on the job training. Okay. So knowing your education options is so important because, as we discussed in week 1, when looking at the different paths to self-reliance and the road less traveled, we need to remember that there are many options that you can choose to gain an education and prepare for the workforce. It's not just a 2-dimensional path where you do one thing followed by another and then you get the job, right? In some 2-dimensional, meaning there's no facets, right? There's not a modular view of a career path. You really do see that. You see, you get the education and then you are ready for a job. But there's so many other things that are between point A and point B, right? That you can really stretch it out to many more letters of the alphabet. Okay. And when you understand the options available to you, going from B to C to D, that is where you can start really narrowing down your focus and then investing your time more wisely, which most people, as I've spent a lot of time with your peers, is that they really didn't give any thought to how they would get the job other than enrolling in an educational program, right? And what you have to remember about educational institutions, like a university, like a boot camp, or a school of any kind, is that they are trying to make money, right? And so they want to get you in, they want you to get through their curriculum. They will likely give you some resources to get a job, but the lion's share, if you will, of the responsibility is on your shoulders. There's no guaranteed outcome. Furthermore, when you see guaranteed outcomes, you want to be I don't want to say skeptical, but you want to wisely evaluate the value of that educational option. With that being said, there are genuinely valuable and reputable options that you can leverage, which will accelerate your job search and your path to self-reliance. I want to talk about the second learning strategy that I would impart during this course. And this learning strategy has been invaluable for me in my personal journey through work and education. So when you approach an educational resource, and that would be a degree, a certification, or an online course, think backwards from the desired outcome of taking that course, completing that certificate or degree. You don't want to think forward from an undesirable state, right? If you think forward from your current state, which is, I don't have the skills and I don't have the education and I don't have the experience to get that job, then you'll find yourself walking into many of those paths along the many different roads. And some of those roads are less traveled for a reason because they don't actually work. Okay. You want to evaluate from the outcome. So think, okay, I have the job now. What got me the job? Well, first, I probably need to, like Kevin said last week, I should probably know someone who either works for a company that I can do this job at. I should know someone who does the job currently that they perhaps can mentor me or give me some suggestions on what to do. So then I can work back from that. And then you find an educational resource that makes sense. Okay. So often you choose an educational resource like a degree. And then as you're halfway through it, possibly out some money, or in the United States, many people get into a lot of debt because they take out loans to get into these higher educational institutions. Then you find out that, well, this isn't really going to end up with me getting a job that I can actually pay back this loan. And I'll be paying it for a very long time. Okay. Those are a few examples. So imagine in your mind what it's going to look like when you have achieved the outcome and work backward to identify the steps you need to take to achieve it. This approach helps you stay focused and motivated by giving you a clear sense of direction. It also helps you, as I said, avoid unnecessary work and make course corrections along the way. Furthermore, it helps you determine the value you will gain from obtaining that education or that educational resource. During week two's discussion, we addressed the job reality that employers pay very well for some jobs and very little for others. So if you're trying to reach self-reliance or financial security, then you need to choose the education option that makes the most sense for your desired outcome. When choosing your education options, it's really determined by how much you want to be paid for the work you do. Therefore, learning the specific skills and developing the ability to provide employers and clients with value will have the most dramatic effect on your earning potential. General skills, which can be taught quickly, such as operating cash register, will not qualify you for a job that pays a living wage. Now, you don't have to spend all your time learning conceptually and never actually doing it, because you'll need to develop an ability to demonstrate your qualifications or the skilled jobs for the skilled jobs you want to apply for. So, it doesn't matter if you know something, you have to be able to show it too. When I mention these skills that can be taught quickly, I use the example of operating a cash register. I think that's an adjustment that I need to make in the presentation. Rather, it would be something more akin to using Excel, Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. Everyone on this call, everyone in this meeting should know how to use Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, because they're basically the same software. One is free, and you can spend as much time as you want experimenting with it. Oftentimes, you can get Microsoft products for a discount or free if you're part of BYU Pathway. So that's something to consider. But they really are identical softwares. And the reason that I say that not only should everyone know how to use it, because the skill that you and the value that you can provide to a client or an employer with that skill is so much, it's so worth the 2 weeks that it may take you to learn it. If you just went and of course there's free education, there's free videos on YouTube. I see a lot of people on LinkedIn posting videos on how to do certain things with Excel. Those skills can be taught quickly, but it's something that you should understand that it's probably something that if you're looking for remote work, it's a skill that you should have before you get into the job. It's going to be expected that you can use those kind of softwares. Okay. So I think that's an adjustment that I wanted to make in the presentation for today. On the topic of learning and gaining an education, these are the specific paths that I mentioned. So there are 3 options for education. And it's important at this point to say outright that education is defined as investing in knowledge and skills for greater leverage and opportunity to become self-reliant. And then there's two options for learning the skills needed to achieve success in the job field. So we'll start first with the three options for education. The first is learn on the job, right? Now you could certainly, let's go back to the example of Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. You could absolutely get a job that pays very little, and you would have the opportunity to learn how to use Microsoft Excel, right? However, because you're learning on the job, because you are in this position where the employer is actually providing more value to you as an employee than you are providing to them, that's not a self-reliant position to be in. I mentioned that in the first week. Employers will want to turn this around on especially young people getting their first job. They're going to say, hey, you're young. You have a lot to learn still. And even if you have an education, even if you have a degree, they're still going to say, oh, that degree, that's just, those are the basic, that's so we could hire you. We got you through the HR, the human resources department, but now we got to teach you how to do all this stuff. And so they're constantly trying to turn this around on the job candidate and also on that new employee, flipping the script and saying, no, I've obtained an education so that I can provide you with value, turns the tables, and then means that you can demand a higher contract or a higher paying wage for the value that you can provide. You can only do that if you have that value to provide. Okay. The next option is an accelerated course of study, a trade school, or a certificate. Now that's more similar to what I'm talking about, where you learn the skills and then you can market yourself as one who can provide value. And you can generally do that in a short amount of time. There are options to do it for free, right? You can forego the certificate, a piece of paper that says I did it, and you could just learn it on YouTube, or you can learn it on one of these educational websites. But if you want to pay for it, if you want that certificate, or if you think it's necessary so that you can qualify for that job description, then absolutely investing in that is wise. And then the third option for education is a college or university degree. Now, let me switch over to the two options for learning before we finish that third option for education. Okay. Now, learning is defined as the acquisition of skills and the ability to translate education into value. The first would be to learn something conceptually, and that could include formal education. It could also include a self-guided study. And then the second option for learning is actually doing it for an extended period of time. You'll need to do both of these things, but what to focus on first, most people learn it conceptually first, right? They go to school, or they watch a video, or they listen. If it's a higher leverage skill, maybe they listen to a podcast about investing, real estate, or something like that. But actually going out and doing it and then learning through experience means that you can generally avoid mistakes that you would not even know are possible mistakes when you're learning something conceptually, right? Very rarely in my several years of education in a university did I ever really get taught about possible mistakes that I could make in my career. They only talk about the things that you should be doing, right? Not the things that you should not, or you should avoid, with maybe the exception of ethical modules. With all this being said, the mistake that many people make is they believe that merely being exposed to educational resources is the same as learning, and it's not. So we return to our third option for education, which is a college or university degree. Now, I want to recognize that there are many valuable resources that you acquire when you graduate from a university, even internships, right? A practical experience. And so by completing that education at a higher education institution, perhaps there are practical experiences that you can gain. There are, laboratories, or like I mentioned, internships, or partnerships with certain companies. But you do need to consider, is this the best way for me in my situation and also for my career goals? If the thing that you want to do, if the job that you want to go for, does it really require 3 years of an education to then get an internship, which then only qualifies you for that entry level job? Maybe there's another option. Okay. And that's what I want to talk about today is that uh, other option, right? So at the Grounded Leader Academy, we focus on coaching individuals, young professionals, as well as seasoned professionals, on skills that relate to leadership and business management. Now, the reason that we focus on these, we don't focus as much on technical skills because those abound. You can learn those oftentimes for free, as I mentioned. There's also far too many technical skills to really offer. We don't want to be the data science academy. We don't want to be the sales academy. We want to be an academy that focuses on creating leaders and giving every industry, professionals in every industry, the opportunity to become self-reliant, provide more value to their employer, and perhaps provide services to clients, ultimately earning more compensation. The example of this would be someone who gets a job as a data entry specialist, right? And they're considered a unskilled laborer, right? Okay, they have the basic minimum qualifications, and we're going to pay them as such, right? Someone who can do a lot of work, but paid very little for that work. Well, the Grounded Leader Academy, how we do that, how we flip that script for that professional is we focus on their personal interests, and we also focus on helping them gain high leverage skills, which include leadership and business management. We do that through one-on-one coaching and mentorship. We emphasize specialized training, and we structure our programs for accelerated learning. You've already seen that a little bit with these 6-week blocks of trainings, as opposed to long, 6-month or 12-month programs. Okay. Here's a few of our clients sharing what they learned and what they took away from our services. And with that, that completes our 3rd week presentation. We are right there at the end of our 30-minute block today. But now it's time to go and access the training module for this week. It's found in the week 3 Google Drive folder. It's titled Work Redefined in 2023. And you need to follow the instructions given in that training module video. It does include a skill journal. And if you have any questions about the skill journal as you explore that, please reach out to me. Of course, I'm going to say that in the training module video as well. And this completes our 3rd week, our Knowing Your Education Options presentation.